In this section I will be able to examine the OSI model, to know networking it pays to possess. An understanding of the OSI model as elements of its area unit utilized in trendy networking. The OSI model, or Open System Interconnection model, may be a network model designed back in the late 1970s. The model itself failed to get adopted, but references area unit still made thereto in trendy networking, particularly to the names and also the numbers within the OSI model. You will notice that the majority network technologies don't match specifically to the OSI model and do not give an explicit match, but it's helpful once discussing networking to reference it against the OSI model. The OSI model has 7 layers. Every layer communicates with the layer on top of and below it solely. By doing this you'll be able to amendment a layer with affecting other layers as long because the new layer is compatible with the adjacent layers. To understand the OSI model higher and the way it works, contemplate a producing plant. Image the primary step of the producing arrange is to create a neighborhood. Succeeding step place a protecting coating on the half. Once the half is placed in an exceedingly box. The box then has a shipping label placed on that. The vital issue to contemplate is that every method of the producing method works on the previous. For instance, you may not apply the coating on the half if you had already placed the half within the box. The OSI models works in equivalent. Each method or layer of the OSI model adds to the previous. The OSI model consists of 7 layers. Every layer handles a distinct part of network communication. The primary is the application layer. This is often wherever the appliance programming, interface or API's area unit found. Applications decision functions in the API to send network traffic. Next you have got the presentation layer. This layer converts the info inputted from the application into a kind appropriate for transmission over the network. The session layer controls communication between two applications. For instance, the session layer might want the port used for communication. The transport layer makes sure the knowledge arrives within the same order it absolutely was sent and isn't duplicated. The network layer determines the trail used to transfer data across the network. The data link layer provides error checking and creates the packet to be sent over the network. Finally, the physical layer sends the info over the network media to the opposite party. To recollect the 7 layers of the OSI model, you may want to consider using a mnemonics. 2 popular ones are all people seem to need. Data processing and please do not tell salespeople anything. Take the first letter of each word to helps you remember each layer name. For A is for application, P is for presentation, S is for session then on. The second method works from rock bottom up. For instance, P is for physical, D is for circuit, N is for network then on. To better perceive however the OSI model works, contemplate this. If a laptop need to send a message to reproductive structure laptop on the network, it communicates with the appliance layer. The application layer communicates with the presentation layer. The communication goes all the manner all the way down to the physical layer. Because the knowledge go down the layers, additional data is added like packet headers and checksums. The info is then communicate across the network over the physical layer. The physical layer can check the check and pass the data up to the data link layer. Because the knowledge goes up the layers, additional knowledge is removed like packet headers. Once the info gets to the highest, all the headers and check sums area unit removed, and also the knowledge is bestowed to the appliance in an exceedingly manner that will perceive. As declared before, the OSI model in its entireness wasn't adopted, but the layers names and layer numbers area unit still used nowadays. Transmission control protocol information science is split into 4 layers and may be roughly mapped to the OSI model. To raised perceive why transmission control protocol is split into 4 layers, it thus an honest idea to seem at what happens at every layer. At the appliance layer you have got protocols like HTTP, SMTP, DNS and RIP. At succeeding layer you have got TCP and UDP. Using TCP you have got reliable transmission, that's packets area unit guaranteed to be delivered and delivered so as. UDP uses unreliable transmission and doesn't guarantee delivery or order of delivery. At the web layer you have got the selection of IP version 4 or IP version 6. The ultimate layer provides a link to your network media. As you'll be able to see, victimization layers permits you to feature and take away protocols and services terribly easily. For instance, you may add a replacement network card, for instance a token ring network card, to your laptop, and as long because the new network card will communicate properly to the layer above, nothing else must be modified. The new network card can work with any protocols at the appliance layer and any transports at the transport layer with none changes. As you'll be able to see, victimization layers makes adding and subject hardware, protocols, and services easy. To place the OSI model in perspective, you will see in an exceedingly heap of literature that refers to a tool as a layer a pair of device or layer 3 device. Switches work on layer a pair of the OSI model. If you think about this little network, the switch is able to make your mind up supported the destination packet that device to send it to. For instance, packets coming back from the PC to the printer would be directed straight to the printer. Packets aiming to the server from the PC won't be seen by the printer. The switches looks at the destination address or rain code address to work out wherever to send the packet. If you add reproductive structure network separated by a good space network, the layer a pair of switch won't be able to router traffic to the current network. To router traffic between completely different networks, you need a layer 3 device, for instance a router. The router are able to router traffic between the two network as routing could be operate on layer 3 of the OSI model. You will see devices on the market known as a layer 3 switches. Don't get confused by this. Keep in mind layer 3 devices support routing. Simply put, a layer 3 switch supports routing and switch. Layer 3 switches performing routing in hardware instead of software package therefore tend to be quicker than routers at routing traffic between networks. Since layer 3 switches logic is built into hardware, they lack some options of routers. Keep this in mind if you opt to deploy one on your network. Simply keep in mind this layer a pair of devices perform local switch in an exceedingly native network. Layer 3 devices supports routing between networks. Devices like firewalls will work on a lot of high levels of the OSI model. For instance, an honest firewall will work all the high to the appliance level and observe threats in protocols like HTTP. If you see a tool that claims it works on a particular level of the OSI model, assume what that level will, which can tell you what the device will further test. Make certain perceive the fundamentals of however the OSI model works.